Hello everybody, welcome to The Great Link, the live after show for PrimetimeUGC and the home of the Star Trek Online founders. I'm Mac30, I'm joined by my regular co-hosts, Soriedem.
Kapla.
And CaptPFDennis.
Hello there.
Special guest today is a fellow Foundry author, it's Wilv.
Hello.
The founders wise.
Welcome, Will. You honor us with your presence.
Thank you. I'm pleased you guys invited me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. Okay, so we're completely unscripted here. It's just a chance to get some of the STO founders together to talk about the Foundry, to talk about missions, mission ideas. No script, no preconception about what we want to talk about. So we're happy to take questions from you guys who are listening on live stream in the chat room. So if you want to start thinking of some questions to fire at us, that's fine. If you've got anything in particular to ask Will, that's fine. Just put it in chat and we'll try to pick those up.
In the meantime, Will, why don't you tell us about what missions you have created?
I currently have 2 missions. My first one is called Life is But a Dream, and then I made a Klingon version of that called But a Dream.
Oh, very nice. I played Life is But a Dream. It was very good. Very good mission.
Oh, thank you.
It is. It's a great idea, and it's done very well. Just tell us a little bit about what happens, Will, in Life is But a Dream.
Well, the basic premise of both the Klingon and Fed mission is that you've lost contact with Deep Space Nine and the task force there. So you are sent to investigate because obviously DS9 is an important location in the war against the Borg. And then when you get there, you find out that things are not quite what they seem. Things are out of place. Things like trees growing where they shouldn't be, people floating, crazy mist, dancing Borg.
Dancing Borg.
Okay.
Yeah, so then it's basically your objective to find out exactly what's going on and put things right in whichever way you see fit, I suppose.
And you said that this is the Klingon version of this mission. Does it follow the same story, or are there variations, deviations from the story?
Well, the basic plot of the story is very much the same. The Klingons, like the Fed, both have to go there and find out why DS9 is no longer, basically, why DS9 is on blackout. And you get there and the story is pretty much the same. There are variations, though, because obviously some of the encounters on the Fed side had to be altered for the Klingons. For example, on the Fed side, there's Ryzian Beach, where Ensign Helna is having a flashback to her traumatic experience there. And as a Klingon, you obviously can't fight the Orions that kidnapped her to Helna and back. So I had to create that encounter for a Klingon player with Hirogen in a jungle instead.
Cool.
It's a pretty crazy scene, actually, that the player is greeted with when they get to DS9. I played this mission a few weeks back. So the idea is that people's dreams are coming to life. People's dreams are turning into reality on the DS9 promenade.
Yes, like
that's
that Rumpelstiltskin episode.
Yes, very much. That's one of the things, since it was in DS9 that the mission takes place, I wanted to touch back to that Rumpelstiltskin feel where people's imaginations were bringing things to life. I also make references to the Voyager episode where they were having their collective dreams made possible by a neurogenic field.
I thought they were actually falling asleep during that episode.
Sometimes there were 2 episodes, 2 encounters. The one they were falling asleep, and the other one they were kind of walking about the ship hallucinating.
Right.
The one was with a bioplasmic plant or something like that. The picture plant that that's how they dubbed it.
That's right. Yeah, I remember those 2 episodes.
So is that how this mission started for you, Will? Where did the idea come from? Was it from those episodes, or was it just how did the idea first come to life?
Well, the idea is actually something I lived with for a very long time. When the Foundry was first announced, and I first thought of using the tool, I thought, wouldn't it be great to do something crazy and wacky with the interiors? So the original idea was started with basically just me imagining a tree in the middle of the promenade. But when I went to actually use the tool the first time around at launch, I was extremely intimidated by it. It was just options and options, and I just was so overwhelmed, I just decided not to. But the idea never really went away. So due to some encouragement from some of the fleet mates, I decided, okay, let me go back in. And the process to begin with was a little difficult. But once I really got into the flow of it, I just found it to be so much fun.
Yeah, it was a very fun mission. And Harian's got a question. He asks, do the stories of both missions mesh? Does it make sense that both the UFP and KDF group goes there and does whatever each group does, he says? Or is it like the Star Wars Old Republic missions where both sides both capture and kill the Gormak King?
The mission, I think, makes sense for both. It's been reviewed by KDF players. It's got fairly positive reception, actually. So far, it's actually received better reception than the Federation mission did when it first launched. So the Klingons seem to enjoy it.
Good. And it might, give you a little promotion for the Federation one as well.
That's interesting. What's the number of plays like for each? I'm curious.
Well, the Federation side has 60 plus plays. The Klingon side, the mission's only been out for less than 2 weeks. So the plays, I think it's got 16 last time I checked.
That's actually a pretty good ratio for a Fed to a KDF mission. KDF missions getting plays, there's obviously not a lot of players, so there usually is a small number that do play the Foundry, and but that's cool. You've got 16, and apparently the review averages out to be a higher score than your Fed mission. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was actually surprised because the mission isn't your typical pew pew go kill, slaughter, maim, capture type of mission. So I wasn't sure that the Klingon players would, take to it, because obviously when you're in a Klingon, most of the Klingon default missions for the game are very combat heavy. And this mission has some combat encounters, but the mission is very story driven. That's one of the complaints I did get from the Fed side, is that there wasn't enough combat for some of the players. And the Klingons, funny enough, don't seem to mind that it's more story heavy than combat heavy.
Well, that's a good thing.
That is an interesting observation, but I think that could be explained just due to the fact that there's so many more and more varied players on the Fed side. Because I'm going to take my Klingon soapbox with me here. And that again has a lot to do with the fact that not the KDF content doesn't get unlocked until so late in the game. It tells a lot about your mission, the fact that so many people are finding it worthy or honorable on the KDF side. That's excellent.
I'm really pleased to hear actually that a mission that is not completely focused on combat and is a bit more of a story and is a bit more of a trip into fantasy is doing so well on the Klingon side.
Yeah, I actually was very surprised and very, very pleased. The way I take a review, anything 3 stars and above is amazing. I mean, 3 stars is average to me, 4 stars is great job, and 5 stars is amazing. And the fact that I've not gotten anything below 3 stars on the KDF side, I was very, very surprised. So I'm grateful people are liking it.
Well, you might find that KDF players appreciate the content more.
That's possible, considering
That's a very astute observation.
Yeah, like Sori said, there's so much more content for Feds, so you're probably right.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great thing that it says that you can go and make a KDF Foundry mission that is not all about combat, and, it could do well. So I think that's a great thing to hear, that you don't have to imagine that in order to make a Klingon mission, it's just got to be combat, combat, combat. It can be a story, it can be a trip into fantasy, it can be whatever you like.
Well, it seems to make sense given that in the beginning, the only way to level up in the KDF was to grind through combat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Don't remind me. But yeah, I have plans, and I think Galamak as well has plans to convert one of our missions into a Klingon mission. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? What was involved, in actually creating this mission from the Fed? Were you able to import it, or did you have to create, the maps one at a time, or share some of your experiences with us?
Well, it's funny you said that about you and Ali Mac porting your missions over, because it was after your last show that I heard that I decided, you know what? Let me go ahead and finally do it. It's something I always meant to do because the mission does take place in a neutral setting. So I finally went ahead and did it, and I found it to be relatively easy. I thought it would be a lot harder, but the import process was actually pretty straightforward. The maps were all there. Everything I had laid out was there. The story, everything. Though the only thing that took some reworking was, of course, I had to pick a different beginning point because obviously the DS9 area is not available to Klingon, so I had to pick a different place to start the mission from. I also had to pick some of the encounters had to be changed. Obviously, like I said, the Klingons couldn't fight the Orions, so I had to pick Hirogen instead. And then it was a matter of tweaking the dialogue so that it would make sense for a Klingon, because Klingons obviously have a very distinct way of speaking. They don't say please, they don't say thank you. They're a very straightforward, take charge kind of people. So I had to write it in that context, For example, when you come across Ensign Helena, you don't say, may I ask who you are, Ensign? You kind of just have to tell her, identify yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like there were a number of changes that you had to make to the mission in order to make it make sense for the KDF.
Yes.
Like you were saying, changing the enemy groups. You had mentioned that you had changed it from Hirogen, so obviously there was story elements that also had to be adjusted. That's kind of interesting. I think it's a valuable lesson, for all authors who are considering creating a mission that's going to be eventually ported over to the KDF.
Yeah, Horian's asking if I had to rewrite the whole dialogue or have the original dialogue in a file and edit it. No, actually, the entire dialogue was already there as it was in the original version. So all I really had to do was just make minor changes to certain specific sentences that I thought just didn't make sense coming from the KDF side. I also opted to add some actual Klingon language to the mission. For example, engage. I didn't use engage because a Klingon wouldn't say engage, so I looked up the Klingon word for engage and I put that in there. The same thing for, proceed and stuff like that.
So you used it to kind of sort of, punctuate certain actions that, the player would automatically assume or already, kind of get a feel for what the context is?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, for example, when you're ready to map transition to beam down to the station or to beam up to your ship or whatever, whenever there's a beaming process, instead of, energize, I put, the Klingon phrase for engage beam, or I can't remember what the translation was, but yeah, I looked it up and I put it there so that, the player kind of understands, okay, that button means I'm about to beam down.
Very cool.
How about your reviews? How are they generally?
Well, on the Klingon side, like I said, they've been extremely kind. Some people, the general response is interesting, very interesting, because obviously it's kind of an Alice in Wonderland sort of trippy mission. On the Fed side, they range from, interesting to, you should never write a mission again in your life.
Oh,
we've all had that.
Oh, those are great, aren't they?
Yeah, I had a guy in all caps write a review about how amazing the mission was, 5-starred me, and he was just blown away. I think I made his day. And that kind of freaked me out. I wasn't expecting that either. But then shortly after I got a review, this is not Star Trek. You should never write again. I was like, wow.
They
all
do
kinds.
go the gamut, don't they?
Yeah,
From one extreme to the other.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I actually had a conversation with that guy that left me that review later and kind of reminded him Star Trek is a very, very diverse franchise. You can't judge Star Trek because even within a series, the episodes can range from very somber to extremely silly. So you know, Star Trek is diverse.
And actually, one of the things we haven't really had in STO, sort of out-and-out comedy missions or very, very silly missions, Ferengi episode missions, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. DS9 had a lot of those Ferengi episodes that were just hilarious, and I kind of looked forward to the next Quark, you know, crazy, outrageous mission.
Yeah, I think they were sort of a they were they were sort of a love it or hate it thing, and I was definitely in a love it position with those. I really loved the Ferengi episodes, and I that would be interesting if the devs were to do a Ferengi episode or just an outright comedy mission to see how that would go down.
Yeah, that would
awesome.
be fun. That would be fun. You mentioned Ferengi. I mean, also, I wouldn't mind seeing a Ferengi enemy group in game. I mean, that would, I think, open up a lot more to get us, you know, Ferengi interactions with or without the whip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a splinter group of, you know, marauding Ferengis who have refused to conform would be really interesting.
Marauder Mo. You know that someone somewhere is going to make a Marauder Mo mission at one point. If not, I'm calling dibs.
Yes.
I would play it in a heartbeat.
Baz is saying Kai Hard. Yeah, Orient. There would be Ferengi who dislike the reforms. You know, Grand Nagus Rom, he shook the system up.
Well, Zek and Quark's mother were the ones who actually began. Remember, it was Rom who ended up picking up the reins. But even then, Quark was the first one to say, "I refuse. This bar will be the last, you know, outpost of true Ferengis."
Yeah. So, you know, definitely if the devs gave the Foundry, you know, more assets, I think there would be people would take advantage of using Ferengi in their missions in that way. I think besides the Fed, you know, on the Fed tune, we do have the ability to create a Ferengi, but you know, you can't fight them unless you just skin them, and then they're just doing whatever animations come with whatever group, you know, you started off with. So it's not quite the same. I mean, come on, Ferengi whips, we got them. They work. Let us use them in Foundry now.
Yeah, I don't know why we don't have every faction in the Foundry.
This is an interesting question, and it's one of my wish list items. It's like, why don't we have the ability to just simply change the weapons or powers of a mob? So you can pick whatever mob you want and just customize it, you know, pick a skin and then pick its power or weapons. That would just be great.
For the group or for individuals?
Yeah,
that would be great.
It would have made my life a lot easier with the mission I made, let me tell you, because I went through 3 different mobs to try and pick one that looked authentic for what I needed to do. The weapons needed to look right, and then skin it so that it would kind of make sense.
Well, I suppose if you were doing Ferengi, they could use mirror-fed weapons.
Ferengi could technically use any weapons, really. I mean, they deal in weapons trading.
That's true.
That is a good point.
True. Yeah. But
so
I think we all wish that we could. We all wish that we could customize the weapons and the powers and the level of a mob. Because the thing that really annoys me, I guess, with the Foundry is that when you put in a certain mob, it will automatically put in a level cap on the mission. So if you want to use Borg, some of the higher level mobs, it's going to cut off your mission to anyone below captain. So it's only going to be captain or admiral or whatever the players above that rank who are going to be able to play the mission.
Yes,
correct.
My mission.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
My mission right now is cut off because of that. I wanted the characters to make sense. For example, the Borg you encounter in the Fed version of the mission, I had to pick Borg as the NPC because if I picked any other species, then all of a sudden you would have phasers popping out of the Borg's implants, and that just looked silly. So automatically my mission obviously got cut off to a certain level because you're fighting actual Borg.
Or one of my personal favorite, things to kind of be amazed at when I see it happen in the Foundry is reskinning a group as, say, a Klingon group or a Gorn group, and all of a sudden one of the group members are SARS or TARGs,
Yep.
You kind of there's a lot of control that's lost when you use the preset, and sometimes sometimes it doesn't help the storytelling. But what would you what would you like to add to the Foundry? Or we've heard a little bit. Do you have anything else that you would love to see added?
Yes, costumes. I'm a member of Caspian Division after all, so I'm big on the pretty clothes. I would love to have more of all the costume options. I mean, I would love to have all the costume options. Part of the mission, a part of my mission originally included a scene with Bajoran Vedics, but of course the Vedic robe isn't there, and I just didn't want to settle for the Vedic robes that are being used in the game because they don't make sense to me. If you notice when you played my mission, I pretty much made almost 90% of the NPCs costumes. All the promenade characters pretty much are reworked because I just hate the default options we had. So I would love more costume options to be able to really flesh out our characters in there.
Agreed.
Yep.
There's so many great options, in the game, yet Foundry is definitely missing them. Perhaps we need to start a list for Cryptic. What is your least favorite thing about the Foundry?
Oh goodness, my least favorite. Gee, I don't know. That's interesting. I guess my least favorite would have to be some of the limitations I encountered, because obviously the imagination it can make a mission limitless, and when you are actually in the process of creating a mission, you're encountered with blockers. Like for example, the beginning of my mission had to be completely retooled because I couldn't just start off outside of the DS9 system. My options were actually start from inside DS9, which obviously would make no sense to the story, or pick a system near DS9 to start the mission from. And that's, because of that, I had to write a whole explanation as to why the player couldn't just go to DS9. And that's kind of silly.
True, and that is a problem with a lot of the Foundry missions for Klingon side. Our doors are limited to two sector blocks essentially, so that is rather limiting. And it would be wonderful to have more doors available. I agree.
Okay, so how long have we been going, guys?
Oh, I think it's probably pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any last thoughts from the chat room or from Will?
Well, I'm going to throw in a question actually that I have received on Twitter from Kushman Zada, and he just wanted to ask us, ask Will, what is the coolest effect that you've been able to put together in a mission that you're most proud of? So, Will, I mean, your mission was, because this was people's dreams coming to life. You had palm trees on the promenade, and you had mist, and you had all these crazy effects. What was the best one for you? Which one did you most enjoy putting in there?
I think my favorite effect was the final critter. He's got this energy thing. It's an encounter with like 3 layers. You've got the critter itself, which is this translucent floating purple guy, and then he's surrounded by an energy wave and particles, and it's a really cool effect because you can kind of see the energy that's causing this hallucination. And when you see that, you know that it's not something you've encountered before in the game. It's something truly alien, within the limits of the game and whatnot.
Excellent.
And Paul, what about you? Do you have a favorite effect that you've managed to use in one of your missions?
I could just think of one off the top of my head, which is the shuttle animation I did in one of my missions, where I actually used place markers to animate a shuttle taking off in the background. So you're like chasing it to stop it, and all the while it's getting further and further and further away.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And sorry, what about you? Have you managed to implement something you're really proud of?
I tried to include something interesting in all of my missions. However, the most recent and the one that always makes me chuckle is from A New Breed of Warrior, the Klingon Smash. I set up a series of reach markers and had a boulder appear to be tumbling down a cliff face and landing smack dab on top of a Klingon warrior. Klingon Smash.
Brilliant.
And that's animation too, right? You must have done that all with reach markers.
Exactly.
What about you, Ali?
For me, I guess it's probably the sinking research station that I did for the Mains of Balnar Moon, which is my most recent mission. So you're inside a research station that's on a moon, basically, that's covered by ocean. So the only structure on this moon is the station. It ends up sinking, and so the player is running around rooms with water initially around their ankles, and it gets higher and higher, and eventually the water is above the consoles, which looks pretty good. It was hard to achieve. There is no water object, so rather than just build the room and then sequentially raise the height of the water, which would have been the obvious way to do it, there was no way to do that. So I had to actually build multiple copies of the room and make them disappear in sequence so that it would appear that you were sinking further and further into the water.
Oh, that was a really cool effect.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
That's cool.
It was a lot of work, but it all takes place in the sea on the Risa ground map, actually, which I hope you would never imagine from playing the mission. Hopefully I disguised it well enough.
You did, and you created a false sense of urgency too, because I remember playing that, and even though there wasn't really a timer, I knew it was all being done by triggers. I remember playing that, and I was like, damn it, I'm sinking.
Okay, so I think we're just about getting to the end of our allotted time, guys. So, Will, a huge thank you to you for coming on and joining us today.
Yep, thanks,
thank
Will.
you so much, guys. This has been so much fun.
We're so glad to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks again, Will. Just so pleased to have you here. We will be back in 2 weeks, I think. Once again, we'll be going live after the next episode of Primetime UGC. One thing I want to throw out before we go is maybe a theme or a topic to think about ready for next time, and that is reviews. We've touched on it just a little bit when we were talking to Will about good reviews and bad reviews, reviews that really make us smile, reviews that really make us angry. Some reviews are quite useful and others aren't. All you guys listening to this on the live stream, and if you're listening to the recorded podcast later on, if you've written a mission, have a think about what were your best reviews, what were your worst reviews, which ones made you smile and which ones made you really angry. Or if you're a player, how do you go about adding a review at the end? Let us know about that. I think we'd like to chew over that a bit next time.
Yeah.
If you have anything to send us, just send it to mailbag at PrimetimeUGC.com. Any suggestions, any questions, anything at all.
Or if you are interested in joining us live, just send us an email. We'll be glad to get it on. You're welcome to send us MP3 audio if you want to talk about something with your own voice. Perhaps you want to include some inflection when you're talking about reviews. Or you're always welcome to email. So.
Okay then, I think we're just about done. So big thanks to Soriedem.
Kapla.
And huge thanks to CaptPFDennis.
Love sitting around and chatting with you guys, and everybody in the chat room. Have a wonderful night.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It really has.
Guys.
The founders are wise.